Restructuring in Express app. In this video, we're going to restructure the previous application we created using the Express generator to conform or to follow this MVC or model view controller model here. So when we structure our app, we're going to have something that looks like this. Everything here looks similar to the default structure that was created by the generator, except these two folders called controllers and models, which we didn't see. So we're going to go and create these two folders here, and it will do a little bit of restructuring in our code to make this work. Okay, so here in the Visual Studio Code, I'm going to go into the backend. Make sure you go there, and as you can see earlier, we have the app here that loads the server, and it takes the user to a particular route based on the pattern here. This is a URL pattern or the routing pattern. The home directory, the root directory, will take the user to the index route, and the users will go to the user's route. And these are up here, right, coming from the routes index or routes users, and they're inside these routes index and users here. So in here, both of these are using the router for the Express router module, and they use the get method for the one of the HTTP methods. And so I'm going to go and run this first. I want to show you something first before we continue on. So let me go here to the terminal and go back to the back end. And again, to run this, you just basically type npm start. And I didn't show the port number, but it should be running already. So let's go to the browser and refresh this page, or if you load localhost 3000, you should see that here. Okay, so now as you can see, this is the running application. One thing I want to show you, if you go back to the code, is that when I go to the code here, now if you change something in a template, we'll do templates later, but for example, if you go to the views, and this is the index template, right? So if I put an exclamation mark here, put two of them. If I save that, save the file, and I'm not reloading my page or my server here. I'm just going to go directly to the browser and refresh the page. Right, you see there's two exclamation marks right here. So that works perfectly fine. Now what doesn't work is if you go back to the code again, because this is an HTML, right? The template, so it works fine. However, if I make changes to my app, any of this JS file, anything in here, if I go here and let's just say that let's see where we go. Let's go to the routes. Okay, I put Express here. I'll just say Express 2, for example. I put Express 2 in instead of just Express. If I save that and now go to the browser and refresh it, right, you see that it does not change the content. The reason why is because I made changes to the source code and not the template. Oops. So when I make changes to my JS file in the source code, I have to go to the terminal and terminate that job or the server and then run it again. So once I run it again, the changes are taking effect. And if I go back to the browser, refresh it, and now you see that I have the Express 2 here and here as well. Okay, so this is not really helpful. I mean, not useful, I guess, when you develop this type of application. You want something that no matter what you do, both in the template or in the code, you want to be able to come back to the browser and refresh it and see the changes right away. And there is a module you can use that in our application. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So back in the code, I'm going to terminate this for now. And then we're going to do something here. We're going to install a module called Node Monitor. Okay, so what Node Monitor does is it will monitor any changes we made to the site. So whether it's in our source code or the template, it will make the changes, reload everything automatically, so we don't have to do that manually every time, and we just refresh on the browser, we'll see the content. So to do that, basically it's very simple. I'm going to install a module called Node Mon. Okay, so npm install Node Mon. It's a node monitor, and you can install it locally. You can also do it a G for globally if you want, so that it's always available everywhere else. You don't have to do it. I'll just do that for globally. So hit enter, and once that install, then when you run your code, instead of saying npm start, you just type the command nodemon, and that should do it. Okay, so now if I clear my console again, I could still do like npm start, right? And it's, as you can see, it still works, but it doesn't do the auto refresh, auto reload. So instead of that, I'm just going to go and say nodemon for node monitor, and it will run the application for us. As you can see, it's starting, no problem here. So now it's working as usual. It's waiting, and if I make any changes to my code, it will reflect right away. Go back here. As you can see, it should still work just like before. Go to users and so on. Okay, so it's Express 2. Now if I go back to my code, and let's just say I remove that back again. This is the source code, by the way. If I change that, save it. As you can see at the bottom here, it kind of does some changes, right? It watches all the time. It changes. I didn't do anything here. I changed my source code here. If I save it already, and now if I go back to the browser and refresh, and you see that it changes right away. So you want to use node monitor for development. It's just much faster, much better that way. Okay, so back to the code. So I can leave that running as is, and if there's any error, we'll rerun it. But I'll close that for now. All right, so let's restructure this application here. We want to create two folders called controllers and models. So let me close this for now. And here in the backend folder, I'm going to create a folder here called controllers. And then also make sure it's in the backend folder and not inside the controllers. Models. Okay, so now we have the model view controller. Okay, so now our app starts here, and it loads the router. It passes data to the router based on what the URL is. It goes to the router, goes in here, the index, and the index goes to the home page. Okay, so now instead of doing everything, handle everything here, I'm going to pass these logic to the controller. So I'm going to go to the controllers here and create a file. I'll call it main.js for main controller. You can put here a comment if you want, main controller. Some people like to call it home controller or whatever it is. If you're more familiar with the ASP.NET MVC, this is something called a main controller or home controller. So usually you have a controller for every feature on the site. If you have a user, you have user controller, you have a home controller, you have class controller, product controller, and so on. Okay, you just kind of basically isolate or organize your controllers in their own files. So in here then, I'm going to have a function here that will process the home controller, the home page. Let's say module.exports, and I'm going to attach this to the home, not instead of index, I call it home. It just makes more sense to me. And I use the function request and response in here. So I process the data right in here. So if you go back to the index file, I'm going to basically copy what's in here, this part here, and put it inside here. I process information from here. Okay, and then back in here then I want to then, instead of using all of these, I replace all these with something called like a main controller dot home, right? Because it's in the main controller dot home, and I need to export this out, which I did already. Exports in here in the main home to this file. So up here somewhere. So you're gonna say something like constant main controller equals, I'm going to require that from the controller folder and main module. So all my main controllers will be, will be inside this main file. If I have the home page have the about page, the contact page, and so on. So you have each of these in here so that it's much easier to handle, manage, and to debug. So you separate all your logic here. So the route just basically takes care of the routing. If a user gets here, you do the get request, then send them to the main controller at the home function, and so on. Okay. So I think that's all I want to do for this one. And later on, when we build the app, we're going to have more controllers. So we're going to have another controller in here for a different feature, and then we're going to go to the routes and create another route for the other features as well, for different routes. And then the models, we're going to come into the model and create another file or files to store our data model, and we'll pass data to the controller, and the controller will process the data and then send that to the views out here. Okay, so there you go. It's a very simple one, but at least we have now our models, our views, and our controller. So the MVC model. All right, so now we have the MVC model kind of created. In the next video, we're gonna. All right, so now we have the MVC model created. In the next video, we're gonna learn how to create views using the Handlebars templating engine.